All right. Good morning, everybody. We left off the Mishnah at the bottom of Kuf Tes Zayin Amud Beis, and the way we go. Beishami Yomrim Tinase V'Tito Ksuvasa. So I think Alan might have mentioned this, hinted at this the other day. Beishami says when we allow her to go ahead and remarry, and she's also allowed to go ahead and take her ksuba if she, from the estate of her late husband based upon her own testimony. So it's not just a halachic that we allow her to go ahead and remarry or perform yibum, but rather she can even go ahead and take her ksuba. No, she can marry, but she doesn't get any monetary benefit. So Amar Beis Shammai says Beis Shammai Tarasam Erva Chamura L'Natir Mamon Akal. So you're gonna matir this woman who is till now an Ashes Ish. You're allowed to go ahead and marry. So, but you're gonna be more. You're not gonna be, if you're makil with that, you're not gonna be makil with just money matters, which seems to be even more makil. Someone on Beis Hillel. So says Beis Hillel back to Beis Shammai. Matzino sheina achin nichnasin l'nachla alpia. We find that the brothers, let's say they're supposed to inherit, so they don't inherit the brother based upon the testimony. In other words, when it comes to testimony, you need edus, you need two people. So over here, we're just basically makel when it comes to her ishus, but not necessarily his estate. Right? Let's go ahead and take a look at what's written in the ksuba itself. That what she wrote, he writes, if you go ahead and marry, somebody else, you can take, from this estate. So in the ksuba itself, it says basically, if you're being permitted to go ahead and marry somebody else, then you should be permitted to go ahead and take your ksuba. So Beis Hillel says, you know what? You're saying good. I will be chayzer and agree with that which you say. Fine. Zakt the Gemara. Amar Rav Chisda nisavma yivama nichras lenachla alpia. So says Rav Chisda, once she performs the yibum, right? So she performs yibum. So the yavam now basically inherits the brother. Why is that? So hey, darshan just ksuba because they darshan ksuba. Anu lo nidrash midrash Torah. So we're not going to darshan Torah. It says yakum al shem achiv amarchmana vareikam. So the pasuk says one is Yakum al Shem Achiv. He takes his brother's place. His brother's name is brother's place. And in addition, he gets his estate. So he should be able to go ahead and inherit, right? So therefore, he should go ahead and get the estate of the deceased brother. Because since he's doing Yibum, right, and the Torah prescribes that if you're doing Yibum, then you basically get the deceased brother's estate. So you should be getting the estate. And Amar Rav Nachman, the Beis Din, Amar Beis Bali. If a woman comes to Beis and says, my husband died, so we permit her to go ahead and marry. Right? Then we, not in addition to be matering her, we also allow her to go ahead and marry a teir ksuba. If she comes to Beis and says, right, she has dollar signs in her eyes, give me my ksuba, so she says, hey, he's dead. Right, give me my ksuba. We think that perhaps she's just coming to testify about money and not coming to testify about issues. So my timer, right? Because she's coming to go ahead and testify based on the, only on the ksuba. She just comes and says, "Hey, give me my ksuba." Right? I'm airing my ksuba. If she says them both. Permit me to go ahead and marry and give you my ksuba. Mahu, kevin my ksuba, so I died to the ksuba. So do we say that since she mentioned her ksuba, that therefore she has dollar signs in her eyes, and therefore she wants to come and go ahead and collect her ksuba? Dilma, kol mile the isla lini shamar lulabeidina. Or perhaps maybe that whatever she has on her mind, she's going to say to the Beis Din. So she's saying, "Hey, permit me to go ahead and marry, and permit me to go ahead and also collect my ksuba." So therefore, maybe she should be believed, even though she did mention her ksuba, but she was just mentioning sort of everything that was involved. And even if you want to say, okay, so since she said, okay, he's deceased, and therefore. She mentioned, to be married, and her ksuba, she didn't mention it. So that's okay. However, what if she says the opposite? Let's say she says, my husband died, give me my ksuba and allow me to remarry. So do we say, do we say that since she mentioned, hey, my husband died, let me collect my ksuba, that she was only intending on testifying regarding monetary matters, and therefore she's coming to collect her only, her ksuba, and therefore it's not based upon iguna, but rather based upon the fact that she wants money, and therefore we shouldn't believe her. And so, or Odilma, perhaps she doesn't know what permits her, right? Perhaps she maybe thinks that me being allowed to go ahead and collect my ksuba will allow me to go ahead and remarry. So the Gemara does not give a teretz for such a question if she mentions both.
The first lien on his estate, the brothers, or who does the evil, or the wife.
So l'chora, it would be her. She has the initial.
She has the first one.
She has this 200 zuz.
Right, and
that is collected basically from the brother-in-law.
And does that money become
her nuksuba?
Son Barzo, or
so that right? So
or it goes back to the brother-in-law.
Right. So that would be something that is hers. That's something that she brought into the marriage, right? That she collects it from him, right? So but this question: is it nichsei maluk or is it sona barzel?
What we're holding.
Nope, yeah.
Right. What we're holding.
We just got to the Mishnah in the middle of Kufiyat Zion, stack in the middle.
Gotcha.
Right. I guess I think normally when they bring something, I think it normally is nichsei maluk. I think normally when something comes in, but I don't.
Whose acharias is it on? That's always the question.
Right. Well, that's the difference between Maluga Barzel. Tzona Barzel means to just have a set value that goes in, and therefore, and if it diminishes, then he owes that Torah almost like a loan.
Right.
Versus, but I think the lashon of the ksuba, so the stand up, if it's, I guess it has to be, directed as to how the estate is qualified, right? So Zak the Mishnah, good question. Hakol ne'amanim la'ida chutz mechamoisa.
Just to answer the Shtaglitz brings that seems to be a discussion in Yerushalmi. Talking about who's Yorish on it, who is
right.
Are the daughters of Zonas
right.
and Masunat, that will be tied into his question.
Right, yeah, of how it's brought in.
Brought in Yerushalmi does it, he doesn't get into it.
Gotcha. Okay, so
that.
That's great Bechafer after. Fine. Zak the Mishnah, Hakol nemanim la'ida. So we know that we're makel, even we allow the woman to testify about the death of her husband. So and any individual can testify about the death of a certain person, because you don't want the woman to because it's something that's will become, it's tough to lie about, because the person walks in 2 months later, then he's a big liar. So we believe everybody except except for, we'll soon see, we're going to list 5 individuals who basically might have some sort of animosity towards a married woman. So Chamaisa, her mother-in-law, right? What are they going to do? They're going to lie. Right. So they're going to, basically what they're going to do, they're going to lie, right? What we're concerned about. And now it's, you go ahead and get remarried. So she goes, gets remarried. All of a sudden the husband comes back 2 months later. It's just, what are you doing? I'm divorcing you. And now that marriage is really done. Exactly. So Chutz me Chamaisa. So from her mother-in-law, Bas Chamaisa, her sister-in-law, right? Her mother-in-law's daughter, right? Who she also maybe is always in the defense of her mother. But Sarasa, her co-wife, right? Her co-wife. There's 2 wives, and she says, "Oh yeah, he died. Go ahead and remarry." Right? The Avimta, also her potential, right? Her sister-in-law, basically her husband's brother's wife. Right, I think the wife of her, Eishes Yavama, right? As Rashi says, Eishes Yavama, right. So now she's, seeing she's a smart woman. If the husband died, you don't have kids, so he's gonna die, and you're gonna come, be married to my husband, and I don't want you as my co-wife. So she has a reason to die. Ubas Baila, and her stepdaughter. Oh, dad died. You can go ahead and remarry. He remarries. Also comes back. What are you doing, right? So that even though we have by get, we have that they are believed to bring a get. But the issue is when a get, you have the document that's written and signed by Adam. So therefore, there's something more than just the testimony, as opposed to a person or a woman coming to say, right, that it was written and signed in front of me. You have that an actual document that they can try and go ahead and track, the witnesses and where it was written. But when it comes to here, it's strictly testimony. Therefore, since we're 100% believing the testimony, therefore these women were a bit chayshish in terms of concerned, that what they were saying. See, Bas Chamia Mahu. What about her father-in-law's daughter? Right. So Talmud the Bas, right? So we said Bas Chamosa, right? That was number 2. So what about Bas Chamia, her father-in-law's daughter? So Talmud the Bas Chamosa Mishum Dika Ema the Sanile. So Yinami Sanile. Is it because that her mother hates her? So too she would hate her. Normally the reason why Bas Chamaisa is because her mother is Chamaisa who doesn't like her and she hates her. However, but over here, right, it's just a father-in-law. There's no mother-in-law in the picture, so maybe she has nobody to stick up for and fight for and hate for. Right? She comes to go ahead and she's consuming that of my father, right, or my mother, right. So to over here she's eating from the daughter-in-law is eating from my father's house, and therefore she has some sort of animosity towards her. So Tashma, come listen. She's happy. If you want to say that Bas Chamia is also one, that should be a 6th one, not only 5 listeners in our Mishnah. So Gemara says, no, no, maybe it means that the child of the mother-in-law or even the father-in-law is upset because the daughter-in-law, constantly eats, and takes from the, her in-laws, her mother-in-law or father-in-law. And therefore, when that Mishnah said the daughter of the mother-in-law, it also included the daughter of the father. Votanya, we learn in the Brisa, chutz mishiva nashim, except for 7 women. So there's 2 added. So he, Rabbi Yehuda, that's the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. The Tanya, we learn in the Brisa, Rabbi Yehuda Meisif af eishes av ve'akala, also included a stepmother and a daughter-in-law. So though they said, well, the Rabbanan said back to Rabbi Yehuda, well, we said Basabal, right? That was one of the ones that was number 5 listed. That's really the same thing as Eshav. It's just the opposite. In other words, it's how you view it, right? One is, right, the wife of the father, and the other one is the daughter of the husband, right? It's the same relationship, right? It just, it's from different, views. So really, you didn't need to include Eshav because that was included in Basabal. And Kala Harei B'chal Chamaisa. And mother-in-law is the mirror image of the daughter-in-law, right? So therefore, those are included. It's not an extra 2, right? 2 different relationships. It's that the 7 is really the 5. Those are included in that. It's just the opposite. Rabbi Yehuda. So what would Rabbi Yehuda say? So I understand why a mother-in-law does not like her daughter-in-law because she says, well, she's going ahead and taking for my husband, right? So Ella Kala, my time is in the Chamay. So why would the daughter-in-law hate the mother-in-law? So Bishlam Basabal the son of I also understand why the stepdaughter would go ahead and hate her stepmom, right? Because she says she's eating, from my father's estate. Ella Eshazav, my time is in the Basabal. Why would a wife hate her stepdaughter? So Ella, if that's the case, my Maisiv Tarti. Right, so if that's the case, right, in other words, so Rabbi Yehuda is saying, so why then add these 2 if there's no animosity? So Ella Kala, my time is in the Chamaisa, Demigla Labna called often, right? Because she goes ahead and tells her son what she's up to, right? She snitches on her, and she said, "Nami sent the Basabal Demigla Levia called often." So too, right? The Eshazav, she also does not like her stepdaughter because she tells her what she does. Mom's been shopping again. So therefore, That's the reason why there's animosity. I've Rabbanan, and what do the Rabbanan say? So why not include those two? It says Kamayim Apanim Lapanim Kain Lev Adam Liyadam. Right, just like the water reflects, so too the person's heart reflects. In other words, if there's animosity one way, there's animosity the other way. So therefore, even though this is different reasons of animosity, once one side hates one, it goes one way, then it reflects and it goes both ways. Rabbi Yehuda, that's referring to Divrei Torah. It's just saying that if one goes ahead and works in Torah, then it will be reflected. The Torah will be with him. So Amar Rav Acha Bar Avia, Rav the Esner Chamaisa Habali Acher Mikan Mau. What about somebody, right, who is going to be the Chamaisa Lacher Mikan? In other words, basically, she's going to be the mother-in-law, right? What's the situation there? To me, Maska Daita Demis Bal V'Nafla Kamei Yavam Asani. Right? Does she think about the fact that if she dies, right, then it'll fall to the Yavam or not? No, she's basically the mother-in-law, right, of the brother.
She's the mother of the brother.
Of the brother, mother of the brother, right? Because mother, right?
You share a father.
Right.
Different mothers.
Different mothers. So she is the mother of the brother, and the bottom of Kuf Yud Zayin Amud Aleph, bottom lines. So, in other words, says this is her potential daughter-in-law. So now, her potential daughter, if her current husband dies and she falls to evil, will be her daughter-in-law. So, does she already have hatred towards her, and therefore she should not be believed, although or not? So, Tashma, come and listen. Top of the page. So, Amra Meis Bali, Meis Chami. If a woman says, "My husband died," then they're, let's say, on a trip, and she says, "My husband died, and afterwards my brother Meis Chami, right? Then my the father-in-law died, right? So Meis Bali B'Afrikach Meis Chami, Tinase Betito Ksuba." She should go ahead and she's allowed to go ahead and marry and take her ksuba, the Chamaisa Asura. But her mother-in-law, right, who now it was just testified by her, her daughter-in-law that her husband died. However, my time, right? But isn't that because we don't believe her statement? Right? So she's thinking, what's the reason why she's going to go ahead and testify this? She's trying to go ahead and mess up her mother-in-law, and therefore, right? And so therefore, she's not believed. So what do you see over here? That in this case, that she wants to go ahead and mess up her mother-in-law. So therefore, there is animosity towards them. So you say, no, right? She already was her mother-in-law. Since it already was her mother-in-law, so therefore she already experienced her, them being related, and therefore she was willing to mess her up. However, in our case, with the potential mother-in-law, we still don't know whether she would go ahead and do something to trip up her potential daughter-in-law by saying that her husband died, and then she fell to evil with her son, and then quickly her real husband would return, and then they would be forbidden. Fine. Naya Mishnah. Eid Omer Meis. One witness says that the husband died, V'nises, and she's allowed to go ahead and marry. Uba echad, or she went to get married. Uba echad, v'amar lo meis, and then one other witness comes and says, no, he's not dead. Harei zo lo teitze. She doesn't have to go ahead and leave and get divorced based on a testimony of the second one who says that your husband did not die after all. Eidamir meis, one witness says he died. And two others say lo meis, he did not die. That's two. So Afal Pishan, he says even if she went ahead and got married, Teitze, she should leave because there's two witnesses testifying to the original husband still being alive. That was case number two. Case number three, Shnaim Amri Meis, two says he died. The aid Omer lo meis, another witness says he didn't die. Afal Pishan, and he says even though she did not go ahead and remarry based on the testimony of two witnesses that he's dead, Tina says she's allowed to go ahead and marry, even though there's one witness testifying that he is not dead. Now, it should be interesting to note, I believe the Gemara points this out, that which we believe one witness is only to prevent a case of iguna, right? So really, the case of where we accept witnesses is really in that which we say that he is dead, right? He is dead. That's really where the Torah believes one witness like two witnesses. So let's see the Gemara. So Tama Denises sounds like in the Mishnah when one witness says mace, right? And one witness says he did not die. So the Mishnah draws a scenario where she gets married, then the witness says he didn't die. She does not have to go ahead and divorce. So Tama Denises, but it sounds like if one witness says that he's dead, another witness comes and says he's not dead, you wouldn't be allowed to go ahead and marry. Right?
But she already did get married.
Correct. But the reason is only because she got married. But if she didn't get married, she wouldn't be allowed to go ahead and get married. Ula says, well, I understand. Anytime the Torah says we believe one person like two, such as the case of Iguna, right? So she's believed like two. So basically, it's like you have two people testify that the guy died, and one person testifying that he's not dead. So we wouldn't listen to that one person. So why is it that we wouldn't let her even get married after the fact if it's 1 versus 1? Because that one, it says that he's dead, is like two, right? So one witness says we permit her to go ahead and get married. Someone comes and says, no, he did not die. Like Teitze, what does it mean? Like Teitze means Behetera Harishon. It means you don't leave the Heter Harishon. In other words, the Heter is still there to get married. She is allowed to get married. It's not just for the fact that, she got married, so she doesn't have to go ahead and divorce him, despite the fact that another witness came afterwards. No. Even if she didn't get married yet, once she has the psak of she's allowed to go ahead and remarry, then we allow her to go ahead and continue and still use that psak and find a suitable husband and get married. Fine. Eid Omer Mace. Now this is the second case. One person says he's dead, and two others come along and say Loi Mace, and then we said he has to get divorced. So Pshita, well, it's obvious, right? Isn't it that it's 1 verse 2? We should believe that too. It says no, like Tzricha, the Psuli Edus. No, we're talking about a case of Psuli Edus, right? In other words, where basically you have people that are not normal Adam witnesses, such as women, right? Anytime where the Torah allows you to go ahead and permit one witness, so then we go after the majority of witnesses, right? Rav Deos. The astu shtei nashim k'ish echad, and in that case, we make, let's say there's two women, like one person. And therefore, you just go after the majority. It's 2 versus 1. So even though over here, right, that you maybe would say that the Torah allows them to be trusted. Nevertheless, it's 2 versus 1, and therefore it's 2 versus 1. And therefore, you would go ahead and believe the two in this case, and not allow her to get married if she was married to have a divorce. Or you can say, if you have one, let's say, witness, a man comes meikara, even you say, right, in such a case that 100 women go ahead and testify, they would be no stronger than a single witness, a single male. So so then it will be basically like one man versus one man, even as 2 witnesses come by. Rather, a woman came in the beginning, and therefore, right, like this way, right? Anytime the Torah says, allows you to go ahead and believe one witness, you have the majority of witnesses. And then in the case of 2 women, right, against 1 woman, like 2 men versus 1 man. But if it was 2 women versus a man, then they wouldn't be believed. So according to these Iboy Sema, if it was a scenario of 1 man versus 2 men, or one woman versus two women, you always believe the majority, because in such a case, we allow women to testify. Therefore, this is a rule, since we would have accepted women. So therefore, Absoliedus or Avadim, whatever it is, then we go after the majority. It's 2 versus 1. We go after the psak of the two, that, or the testimony of two, that the husband is not dead. But, so that was the case in the Mishnah. But if it was in a scenario of where it was a man who says that he died, and two women testify that he's not dead, in such a case, then it will be palgo, then it will be 50-50, and then we wouldn't go ahead and force her to go ahead and get divorced. Fine. Shnaim Mace, and then the last case, two people said he died, and one says didn't die. So then you can go ahead and continue to her psak that she can remarry. So my kamashlam. So the Eidos, we're talking about a case of Psuliedus, says a woman, right? The Azil Basar of Deos, right? They can go after the majority. So the Gemara says, I hainu hach. So that was what we said earlier. So Maldatema Kiazlina Basar of Deus Lechumra. Maybe that what you say, you can go after the Rav Deos, is a Lechumra. Now there's two women testify that he's alive, and the other one says not. So therefore you go after the majority and you can't go ahead and marry. But maybe Lakula low. Maybe if two people says that he's dead, you go ahead and remarry, and then one says that he's not dead, maybe we wouldn't go Lakula Kamash Malon. That even the Rabbi Nechemiah's rule is even Lakula, and we allow her to go ahead and get remarried. Fine. Now Mishnah says Achas Ameris Mace, the Achas Ameris Lames. You have two tzaras, shtei nashim tzaras, two co-wives married to the same man. They go on some cruise. They come back. One said he died, he fell off the ship. The other one says, no, he didn't die. Zashameres meis. This one that says that he died, tinase. She can go ahead and remarry and take her ksuba. Zashameres lameis. One says he did not die, he cannot go ahead and marry. So that was one case. So we believe her 100%, and the other one, it cannot. Achas Ameris Mace. I'm sorry? Yeah, I mean, right. Right. But then I was right. But also, when we believe one, right, it's not, we don't allow her tzara, because the tzara is one of the prohibited people to, also testify about it, her. So Achas Ameris Mace. Now, one says he died of natural causes. The other one says he was killed. Since they're contradicting one another on how he died, so therefore it's not clear, right? And therefore, such a case, we would not even believe in this case. Even the last, you're saying, what? In the last case, bigger contradiction. Alive versus dead, right? Seems to be more a contradiction than dead versus dead, just how it occurred. So we have to see that. Rameir says, so this is Rameir, right? Well, the Gemara is going to point this out. Rameir, Rabbi Huda, Rabbi Shimon Ayrim, since both of them are agreeing that he's not alive, he's not Inasu, then they can go ahead and marry. One witness says, now the previous case was two tzaros, right? Two
the
co-wives.
last case didn't say anything about them collecting ksuba.
So that would probably go back to the machlokas of Beis Hillel, Beis Shammai that we had at the beginning of the shir about collecting, right?
Oh,
so
well,
right.
Because it did mention.
Yeah. No, we're just saying to the extent that we believe her, so much to the point that she's like a regular woman that we believe, that we say is allowed to go ahead and take her ksuba.
Mm-hmm.
So that was just pointing
Okay.
the extent of the amount we believe her, because maybe you think her co-wife is saying the guy is alive, and So anyway, one witness, not a co-wife, but one witness says he died. One witness loimes. Isha imeres meis, or a woman says meis. Isha imeres loimes. Such a case, she should not go ahead and marry based upon this case, because you have conflicting testimony, and therefore she cannot go ahead and remarry. Fine. Zok the Gemara. Tamra.
How is that different from
the first case? The ratio was the two co-wives, and she was testifying about herself.
Oh, I see.
So she's
Now we're
Nemenis.
talking
Now this is just one verse.
single
Right.
A.
Right. Fine. Now, let's see.
This is a male lady.
Or 1 verse 1. It was either one man versus one man or one woman versus one woman. Isha Meris Mace, right at the top of the page says Isha Meris Mace, Isha
Right,
Meris
now we're
Mace.
talking Aid Omer.
Right, both cases were 1 verse 1. Just
Right.
the Resha was co-wife versus co-wife. And the third case is either man versus man or woman versus woman, but none of them related to any of the parties. Now, Zok the Gemara. Kama di Amrle Mace. So in the first case, right, when one Sarah says dead, the other says no, he's alive. Kama di Amrle Mace. But if she was quiet, Tinase. Then she was quiet. She should also be able to go ahead and remarry, right? Well, what do you mean? I thought we said that a co-wife cannot go ahead and testify for other co-wife, right? And this one's really trying to go ahead and trip up her old wife. In other words, she's trying to fool her by saying, "Oh, I'm going to go ahead and get remarried." Yeah, you go ahead and get remarried too, right? And then she waits for the other one to get remarried first, and then then she pulls the rug out from under. So Gemara says no. It says no. Even in the case of when she tells right, since she says that he's dead, right? The Thomas Nafshin Plishtin Kamra, right? So maybe you'd say that maybe she shouldn't be believed at all, right? When she says he didn't die, right? Maybe it's a chiddush here that maybe she shouldn't believe at all because she's saying, hey, I'm going to go ahead and die with other Plishtim, right? At least I'll take them all out, right? It's worth it to me if I take myself out, take them all out. So therefore, I'm going to go ahead and remarry. I'm going to have my Tzara also. She sees me get married. She's going to go ahead and remarry, and then her husband's going to come back and he's asked to divorce her. All right, he'll divorce me too. Fine, but no big deal. But at least he divorces her, right? So she's so much there. So Kamash Milan that we don't say that. And therefore, if this woman indeed testifies that her hatred is not so much for her co-wife, that if indeed she testifies that he's dead and she's going to go ahead and remarry, then we permit her to go ahead and get remarried. Fine. That was case number 1. Now, case number 2, Achas Ameris Mace, the Achas Ameris Nahara. Now, the Leaf Rameir Beresha. Why doesn't Rameir, so Rameir in this case says, right? Since they're contradicting one another, you cannot go ahead and get remarried, right? So why didn't Rameir argue also in the Resha, right? As Zevi sort of, was baffled, right? One says alive, the other one says dead. That seems to be more of a contradiction than just, how he died. So Omar, Rabbi Elazar, Machlekes, Shnuya, right? So he says, really, no, that is the Machlekes, right? In that case also, right? Rabbi Huda, Rabbi Shimoni, right? And this is, they would argue in that case, but that which we say in the first case of the Mishnah of Achas Ameris Mace, the one which she can remarry, that would be the opinion of Rabbi Huda, Rabbi Shimon, right? Since they're allowed to go ahead and marry. So that was the opinion of Rabbi Elazar. Rabbi Yechanan Amar, Afilu Tamer Rav Meir, even Rav Meir would agree in that case. Why? Well, Afilu Rav Meir might. Why? T'chol loy meis be'edus isha la'chachashi, right? Because any time that she she says that he did not die, right, is not considered to be hachasha. Because hachasha is right. The Torah the Torah allows a person to say they died. Right. It doesn't give someone the ability to testify they didn't die. Right. The special heter of believing one witness is to say that a person died. Right. So therefore,
the scenario.
So one second. So therefore, if you have one say that he died and one say he didn't die, so the Torah believes a person say, or the woman to say he died. The Torah does not believe a woman to say he didn't die. So when you have those two, they're not on the same level. But once you have a scenario where they both say that he died, just a difference of how they died, he fell off the boat or he died of natural causes in his sleep, right? So therefore, then that's considered contradictory testimony, and therefore that's when it's not believed. Fine.
Okay, the scenario is the two women appear in court without their husband, and they're trying to
Well, they
Yeah.
want to marry. They come into testimony. They said, we just came back from our cruise and he's no longer with us. And
Right,
yeah,
he's not with us. You fall off the boat or you push.
right. But right, or maybe he's still somewhere else. He's, he went to, he took the boat on one of the islands and he never returned to the cruise ship and he didn't come back. Fine. Tanan. So we learn in the Mishnah it says, Eid Omer Meis, Eid Omer Le Meis. Let's look at the third case. Or Isha Meis Meis, Isha Meis Le Meis. A woman says he died, then one says he didn't, or a woman says he died, and then one says didn't. This one cannot go ahead and marry. So Bish Rabbi Elazar, this works okay according to Rabbi Elazar, who said earlier that Rabbi Meir also argues in the first case, stomach Rabbi Meir, because Rabbi Meir says, he agreed in that case. He says, yeah, if they're contradicting each other, you can't go ahead and remarry. So therefore, it could be like Rabbi Elazar. El Rabbi Yechanan, but according to Rabbi Yechanan, would say that in such a case, right, that even he would agree because we don't listen to the second witness who says lo mace, because the Torah only listens to the person who says mace. So Ella, somebody Ella Rabbi Yechanan kasha. According to Rabbi Yechanan, it's a kasha. The Gemara says, indeed, yeah, kasha. And you're right. According to Rabbi Yechanan, it's a kasha of how to understand the third case, because if he holds that when you have 1 verse 1, the Torah believes only the person says he's dead. So what good is the person says he's not dead? They shouldn't be. She should be able to go ahead and get married in such a case. But the Mishnah rules like Tinase, so therefore it's a kasha and Rabbi Yechanan. Fine. Zak the Mishnah. Nine Mishnah. Aisha shahalcha hi ubala l'medina siyam. A woman that went, her and her husband, to Medina Siyam. Ubo v'amra meis bali. She says, my husband died. Tinase v'tital ksuvas. She can go ahead and get married, remarried, take her ksuba, v'tzarasa asura. But her tzara is forbidden, right? Her tzara is not allowed to. However, haisa bas Yisrael l'kohen. We so don't believe to the point that if the tzara was a bas Yisrael and she was married to the Kohen. So now remember, we don't allow her co-wife to go ahead and remarry. Okay, why? Because we assume she's still married. Let's say she was a bas Yisrael and she was married to, and this guy, the husband was a Kohen. Okay, so haisa bas Yisrael Kohen teicha b'truma divrei v'tarfon. We so don't believe her co-wife who made the testimony that she can continue eating truma. That's how much he was lying. It's a huge contradiction. One is remarried as if he's completely dead, and the other one is eating truma as if he's completely alive. That's Rabbi Tarfon.
Yeah, that's weird.
Rabbi Kiva Omer ein zaderech matzis midei avera ashti asur linasei asur melecha b'truma. Says no, that the only way we don't want her to trip up is we got to be sort of machmer both ways. In other words, this is not how to be, completely kosher. How to do it is we don't allow her to go ahead and marry, and we also don't allow her to go ahead and eat truma. In other words, there's a big suffix, on our plate, and therefore we're going to sort of, avoid any sort of avera that by banning her eating truma. So Amra meis bali v'achar meis chami. Now, if she says in the case that my husband died, and then she says afterwards my father-in-law died, and her mother-in-law, who now just heard the testimony of her daughter-in-law that her spouse died, asura, she is asura to remarry. And Haisa Bas Yisrael Kohen, she was, she was a Bas Yisrael and she was married to the father-in-law who was a Kohen. Then she can eat Shuba de Tarfon. No, this is not a way of avoiding Avera. Rather, Ashdei Asurlin Asay, until we say that the mother-in-law should not be able to go ahead and remarry, and also not continue to go ahead and eat Truma. Right. Now, why do you need both cases? We need both cases to teach both about the tzara, the co-wife, and also about the mother-in-law. If we just had the first case of the tzara, right? Because the tzara, right, was of the same item, of the same husband. In other words, she when it comes to the mother-in-law, right, it's not as close a relationship as she has her own husband, she has her own family. It's not the same as an actual co-wife. The co-wife is more hatred. All right, maybe I would say Rabbi Tarfon Rabbi Kiva and say that she cannot go ahead but when it comes to a co-wife, to continue eating the truma. And if we just had the case of the mother-in-law, Rabbi Kiva, in that case, Rabbi Kiva says where it's not. In other words, in that case, Rabbi Kiva would say to avoid eating the truma, but in the case of the co-wives, maybe I'll agree with Rabbi Tarfon, right, that she could go ahead and continue eating truma, and therefore, therefore, we need both cases. See, both cases, whether it's her co-wife or her mother-in-law, both cases, Rabbi Tarfon and Rabbi Kiva would have the same shita. And Rav Yehuda Amar Shmuel, halach Rabbi Tarfon. The halach is like Rabbi Tarfon, who says that she's completely ignored and we allow him to go ahead and eat the truma. And Amar Abai Afanim Tanina, similarly, we learn Nitain li ben medina sayam. If a woman, right, says that, which was unknown, she went overseas for a couple of years. She said, I had a child, when I was overseas, and Meis Beni v'charkach Bali, right? Then my son died, right? And then my husband died. So she left, she had no children. So when she left, there was no Yibum requirement. Actually, there was the Yibum, right? There was a Yibum requirement. Then I had a son born, so I didn't fall to Yibum, but then I according to her testimony, he died. And then my husband died, so therefore I would fall to Yibum. So nothing really changes from the status quo that we thought. So Nemedes, she's believed. If she says, Bali, I had a child out there, and my husband died, so I don't fall to Yibum because I had a child there. Right? We don't believe it. Right? However, we are chayshish for her words. We do chalitza, not Yibum. So we say right? When it comes to her words for herself, then we're chayshish. But when it comes to her tzara, we're not chayshish. Shmamina and dealer from here that even when it comes to the gabi the truma, right? We're not chayshish for it all, and therefore the tzara should continue status quo that she can go ahead and continue to eat truma because her husband was the kohen. Fine. Turn the page. Naya Mishnah. So top of Kufi Chesam days. How we doing on time? 7:23. All right. Yeah. Yeah, we'll get there. What was that?
We learned earlier that when chalitza is performed, the bracha is made.
No, there's no bracha. This is kriya. This is kriya.
Oh,
this is kriya from the psukim, right? They say
there's no
this,
bracha.
Right? No bracha. This man chooses not to destroy his house, right? And this is what you do, right? So they each have a role to say. She has two, and he has one, and the people around him.
In a case of doubtful,
you still do the same. Yeah, it's not like a case of sota where you're erasing Shem Hashem and stuff like that. Fine. Zok the Mishnah. Kidesh achas mechamesh nashim. Guy, he married one of 5 women. Right, doesn't remember which one. It's dark. He was, he was betrothed to me. He has to give a get to each and every one. And then what does he do? He takes the ksuba, let's say 200 zuz, puts them over 5 of them, and says, "You guys figure it out. I'm done. I made my payment. You guys can do what you please with that." Rabbi Kiva Omer. He has to give a get and a ksuba to each and every one to make sure he's yaitse. Similarly, if he steals from one of 5 people, and he doesn't know from which person he stole from. I stole from one of these houses. I don't know which one. Each person says he stole from me. So he takes the vase that he took, right, and he puts it in between them. And then he says, you guys figured out whose it is, but I'm done repaying to until he goes ahead and pays back each and every one. Fine. That was the Mishnah. Zok the Gemara. So Kidesh Ketani. Baloi Ketani. So only talking about a case of where he's Kidesh, right? He's Makadesh with money, right? We put him, he didn't do a Ma'aseh Bia. right? Kidesh Katani, Baal Loy Katani, right? And in other words, so Baal is basically, he did an action, right? He did an action of Bia to be Makadosh them through Bia. Now, so now, all similarly, or unsimilarly, it says, the Mishnah says, so one case is Kidesh, where he didn't do a Maisa of Bia. Now, Gazal Katani, Locha Katani. But when it comes to the Gzela, we're talking about him doing an action, right? Gzela, right? As opposed to Lokach. Let's say it was the case, there was 5 stores, and he bought something from the store, he says, I'll pay you tomorrow. And he doesn't know which store he took from. And each of the store owners says, you took from me, right? So he didn't do a Maisa Vera, right? He didn't do a Maisa there. He just, but our Mishnah doesn't list that case. Our Mishnah lists the case of who does a Maisa Vera, right? So the Reisha of the Bia is not talking about a Maisa. It doesn't talk about Baal. He's talking about Kidesh. And the Seifa is talking about where he does a Maisa, all right, and he doesn't is not just purchasing without forgetting to pay for it. So Masnisin, somebody Masnisin. Who is the Mishnah like? Loi Tanakama, Loi Rabbi Shimon Elazar. It's not like Tanakama, Rabbi Shimon Elazar. The Tanya, Rabbi Shimon Elazar, and where do we see them? The Tanya, Rabbi Shimon Elazar, Aimer, Loi Nechlu Rei Taf Rabbi Kiva, Al Kidesh, Achal B'Chanishna, Shavena De'amezim Kidesh. He's not talking about a case where they don't argue there when he's just Mekadesh one of them, Sheminech Ksuba B'Neim. It's not like, right? Where he can just leave the money. He didn't do anything really wrong. He was just forgetful. He forgot which one. Right?
Well, he was Makadesh.
He was Makadesh. No, he was not Makadesh with Bia. He's just Makadesh. Now with Bia, we're assuming that Mekadesh with Bia is a mice, like a mice Isser, right? Because one should not be Mekadesh with Bia, right? There's the whole thing over there in the Gemara there. So we're assuming that was sort of, he didn't do an or you can look at it as he didn't do an action, right? He just did Kesef. He didn't do an action, a mice of Bia. So
How did the 5 people come forward, whether it's,
I'm sorry?
how did the other 4 people who weren't married or weren't robbed,
Right?
how did they come forward?
Meaning because they're lying or
Like 4 of them are.
Yeah.
If it's correct, that
right.
that he only did 1.
Right, so maybe there was 5 people around, and he was on a game show, right? And he got to marry one of the 5. Each one says, "I was, it was me." And that was me.
Said I got the rose.
Yeah, I got the rose, right? Yeah, right. But each of them have the same claim. None of them come with a vade. None of them come with proof. None of them come with witnesses. Right now, we're assuming it's all. Everyone is level, right? And we don't know which one. And it could be, but I don't think it's a case of where, let's say, he threw a get, and it was which one was closest to, or actually not get, Kesef Kedushin. But over here, especially with Makash Bia, right? Makash Bia wouldn't be such a scenario, right? So each one, yeah. So over here, so they're all making the claim. So if it was just Kesef Kedushin, so even that case, so according to Rabbi Shimon Elazar, they wouldn't argue. Everyone agrees. You just leave the ksuba there, and you ladies, figure it out. Aman nafku al shabal. Well, he's bo, right? If he was bo, and right. So Rabbi Tarfon says, "Meniach ksuba b'neim is talking." In that case, Rabbi Tarfon says he can leave the ksuba there, and Rabbi Kiva Eimer no ad shisham chaleach v'yachad, right? And until you argue, and also lo nachlu Rabbi Kiva al shalokach mekach michamesh b'nei adam. Also, there's no arguments, right? If he purchased something, you forgot which store owner, the store owners are busy, they're not sure, everyone thought it was them, but you walked into my store, they don't know which one, he walked into all 5, but he only one of them he purchased it. It's not like that. Over there, he leaves the money with him. Only if he stole, right? But if he stole from one of the 5, then Rabbi Tarfon then Rabbi Tarfon still says you can leave the item between them. You have to repay each one. Now, by the fact that Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar says in the case of Kidesh, right, and the Lokach, in other words, we just Mekadesh with money or Lokach, there's no argument. Michlal, the Tanakama Savar Pligi. The Tanakama would hold that there is an argument. So therefore, money, who is our Mishnah like? Tanakama, at least Kidesh Lokach. If it's according to the Tanakama over there, right, then the 2 cases are Mishnah should be Kidesh and Lokach, right? Because even those cases there's a machlekes. And if it was either Shimon and Elazar, at least a Baal v'Gazal, it has to be a case where there's a Maisa that he did, such as he was Baal, one of them the Kedushin, and the latter case was Gazal. So the Gemara says, Yolam Rabbi Shimon Elazar, my Kidesh wasn't anyone says Kidesh v'Bia. is Makavish Bia. So therefore, both of them are talking about a case where there was a Maisa done, and therefore, if there was no Maisa done, he could just leave the money there and say, hey, you guys figure it out. But since there was a Maisa done, therefore it's not fixed up until he goes and gives to everyone. And Tana, so Kidesh Ladia Kaicho de Rabbi Kiva. So it says Kidesh to tell you the Shrein Akiva, the Afa Gav the Surabban of his Kanis, right? That even though that he did the Issa Rabbanan, right? And when he was Kanas, right? So even though, because Rabbi Kiva, he was the one who says that you have to go pay each one, right? So even though he committed that, nevertheless, the Torah is only the Rabbanan, he still has to go ahead and pay it back. And Tani Gezel Rabbi Tarfon, and also it gives the case of Gezel Rabbi Tarfon, which does the Deraisa. The Afagav, the Issa Deraisa of it, even though it does Issa Deraisa, nevertheless, like Kines, he's not he's not punished in order that he has to pay back each one. Still, Rabbi Tarfon says he can leave the money and says, you guys figure out who the Gezel goes back to. Fine. The last mission of the parak, so Zuk the Mishnah. So a woman who goes to Medina Siyam, right, with her husband and her child. So it was assumed that at this point she would not fall to Yibum, right? She is married with a child. She says, my husband died and then my son died. So now when my husband died, he still has a son. If I don't fall to Yibum, she's believed. However, if she says my son died and then afterwards my husband died, she is not believed to the full extent. However, right, that perhaps he did die, and therefore she has to do chalitza. She can't go ahead and just muteras shuk, but she has to go ahead. Right. This was the right. So it's the case of the mother-in-law, right? Now, if here comes the next case. If she goes off and it was, she left childless, now she was with father Ibum, and then also so she says, my son died, then she's believed because she does not change status quo because she left, right? Subject to Yibum. Therefore, based on her testimony, she's subject to Yibum, and we believe her. However, but she goes ahead and says, no, but my husband died and then my son dies. And in the menas, we are chayshid, we're concerned about her testimony, and she has to do chalitza and not Yibum. Now, if she says, right, we all know too, right, she left, a big family vacation, and she had a brother-in-law that was born, right? So so I had a brother-in-law that was born there, and my husband, right? And then he died. Or Yavami v'chagameis bali, or that he was, that there was a Yavam and then he died. Now menas, she is believing such a case, and she can go ahead and she's muter l'shuk because she doesn't do Yivam anyways, right? If he was never born, she would just be muter l'shuk. Now that he was born, so something, even if it was Zika, but now he's dead, right? So therefore, she's once again muter l'shuk. Now, Holka he ubayla v'yavama. She goes, her husband, her brother-in-law, right? He was already born to Medina Siyam. If she says that who died first, she said, first my husband died, and then afterwards my Yavam. Right? She's not believed. She's not believed to say, because we know the fact when she left, she had a brother-in-law, right? So she to you. So she's not believed, right, to say my brother-in-law died. She's believed to say my husband died, but she's not believed to say my brother-in-law died, right? So therefore, right, and since we know she had a brother-in-law before that, a Yavam, so therefore, ain't an amenas. Just in
the previous case, she also
but we didn't know she said he was born and then he died. Since we didn't even know about him, the Yavam, right? We didn't know about her brother-in-law being born, right?
Oh, we didn't even know about it.
Right. But now we know he was alive. He went on the cruise. He went on your 3-hour tour, right? We know he was gone, right? So therefore, the testimony, we're not going to allow you that testimony to bridge over and to cover him. Fine. Now, so a woman is not in the mesh. Also, right? She's also not believed to say that if, right, her Yavam was married to her sister, then if she fought the Yibum, that she would not be able to go ahead and marry him. But if she says her sister died, and therefore she's now mutter to go ahead and marry her husband, right? That's also. And a person also not believed to say that my brother died in order that I could do Yibum on his wife. Or he's also not believed to say that his wife died, that I'm able to go ahead and marry her sister, right? So you can't believe to marry those. We only allow a woman to go ahead and you can't testify about somebody and a relative now to permit you to be able to marry one of the relatives. So boy b'nei Rav Rav Nachman hamezake gel ishta b'makam yavam ma. So if one goes ahead and gives a get, he wants to be mezaka a get to somebody to give to somebody else, right? In other words, b'makam yavam ma. Now, as if he doesn't want his wife to fall to Yibum, right? So he wants to basically go ahead, says, you'll be zeicha, right? You'll be my shliach, that she'll be, divorced, right? Now, so you don't fall to Yibum. All right. Right. That was the case of by David, right over there. So Amazaki Geli Isha b'makam yavam mahu. Kevan this neile is zechus hula. Right. So since we say that she doesn't like the yavam, so therefore it's a zechus, it's good for her. Right, she's a chus for her, and therefore it should be work. Therefore it should be a chus, and therefore she'll work even without her knowledge. Right? Sometimes she does like her brother-in-law. Therefore, it's not always as chus, and therefore you'd have to have her, her consent before. Tanina, we learned right? We see over here that we are chayshin in this case. To her words, right? And therefore she does chalitza na yibum. In other words, in this case, that even though something which we know would have been which would have been forbidden, so nevertheless there is some chashash. So therefore, we are concerned of it, and therefore we have to do chalitza. So in this case over here, that even though the person is dying and he wants to give, the mezaka to get to her. Right. So therefore, she's perhaps it does work, and therefore she would not fall to yibum. We're chayshish for the get, and therefore she only do chalitza not yibum. And Amarle Ravina Rava Hamazaka get ishta b'makam ktata ma'u. What about a case of when one goes ahead and gives a mizaka get? He has the get. He says he got it for the husband, right? Whether it was ktata, there was argument between the husband and the wife. So came in the east, do we say that since they were fighting, therefore it's a chusfer? Perhaps we say that it's better for him to at least be married. So Tashma, right? It's better to go ahead and live with somebody else than to live alone, even if you go ahead and hate him. And Abayomar, the Shumshun Gavra, right? Kursa Becharasa Ramilo. Right, so it says even a woman, right, who's I guess he's tall and her husband is small, like an ant, right? He's a small person. Nevertheless, she can go ahead and sit amongst the other women, the married women, right? She can sit at the table with the married women. Papomar, the Nafsa Gavra, even somebody who has a peasant's job like combing wool, Tikre B'Sifri B'Bavatesa, right? She go ahead and she can call him. Hey, come sit with me. So she knows she's with somebody else. Rav Ashia, Omer. De kulsa gavra leiboy tavchi lekidra, right? Even somebody who's who comes from a family with really bad yichus, nevertheless, she won't even make him do anything, but she's just happy to be with him. And all this was the reason Satana v'kulan mezana is v'tolim b'alayim. Why do they like to have a husband even though they don't like to be with him? Because they can go ahead and be mezana with other men, have children and say, oh, it was my husband's child. And therefore, so that was the reason why he said that even for a woman, to be with somebody who's not even fit for her is better than living alone because she can pull off that shtick. All right. Yeah. Haisha Shalom. We finished the 15th parak. Tomorrow, Hashem, we will continue from here. So tomorrow, so let's call it 7. We'll call for 7:10. So 7:10 to 7:40, and then 7:45 is minyan.
What time is it now?